Edward Brown, host of The Best of Investing, here to remind you to tune in this week on Saturday at 8 p.m. Our guest is going to be Timothy Lyons. You're not going to want to miss this show. That's The Best of Investing on Saturday at 8 p.m. Welcome. You're listening to The Best of Investing. I'm your host, Edward Brown. I got a special guest here, and I'm going to introduce him in just a minute, but our phone number is 888-912-1190. Use that number to answer the trivia questions for our 5-pack tanning certificate given away during this show. That certificate is not sponsored by the radio station, but by Tan Bella Tanning Salon with 2 locations in San Francisco and 1 in Marin. And today we're going to do a little history. The theme is going to be the American Civil War. We'll see how much you know about the American Civil War. All right. Yeah. So our special guest, who we've had on a couple times in the past, Dane Moeller, who's the division president of Primary Residential Mortgage. Dane, welcome back to The Best of Investing.
Thank you very much, Edward. Happy to be here.
Okay. So let's start off. What's the current status of mortgage rates? Because they seem like they've popped down just a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, I hope I'm right that we hit the high water mark around the end of October, and November was one of the single best interest rates months I can remember in 20 plus years. Just from a first of the month to the end of the month. I mean, it's been one solid train of declining interest rates. So very welcome.
How much did they decline?
I was looking at some numbers. I quoted somebody in the October 23rd, and it was 0.75% lower today than where it was October 23rd. So that's a huge drop. Yeah, in 5 weeks to go down 0.75%. That's a big change.
So I would presume business is picking up then.
Well, it's a slow time of the year. This is we just had Thanksgiving, where everybody's we're December this week. Everyone's thinking about the end of the year. So it's slow. I read that pending home sales last month were the lowest in 20 years. I mean, the housing market is slow, but with these rates coming down, I think once people wake up, when we get to January and we've gotten through the New Year's, I think that a lot of people are going to re-enter the market, and we're going to see a pretty good pop of home values in the spring.
And do you think it'll be at the entire spectrum, or it'll be like just the high end or just the low end? We think?
I think it'll be the entire spectrum, although I do think that existing homeowners that are doing the kind of move up, are going to continue to be really held down, because, rates going from the 8s or 7s to the 6s doesn't mean anything if you have the 3s, right? So I think it will continue to be mostly first-time home buyers, investors, second home buyers, and very little kind of like downsizers or move, your traditional kind of starter home to next house buyer. I think those will be.
What do you think what is driving the market to make the rates go down so fast?
Well, inflation's starting to seem under control. That's the main thing. The Fed is now signaling that they're probably done. They'll be lowering rates in the new year. How soon, we don't really know, but if you look at all the charts, and I've said this since the Fed started raising rates, as soon as everybody knows they're done, then mortgage rates will start falling. We don't have to wait for them to start lowering them. Mortgage rates, like the stock market, we buy the news, right? We're always betting on the future, not necessarily what's happening today. And so, that's what mortgages are starting to do. They're going, oh, well, it's going to be lower later. This is a long-term investment. So we're thinking about later.
And what, is it a supply and demand of money? Who's setting the rates? Okay.
Yeah. So mortgage rates are set in the mortgage-backed securities market, which is similar to a stock market, or how treasury rates are set. I mean, it's, supply and demand. The demand and the supply are often based on expectations, right? If you can get a higher rate of return next week, well, maybe you don't want to buy this week. But if you think returns are going to be lower next week, well, you better buy today because you don't want to miss out. So oftentimes the movement of interest rates creates the movement, right? It's a snowball. And now that people are feeling like there will be less return in the future, that means they want to buy now, which means the sellers can offer lower interest rates, which, feeds itself. And we were in that terrible feedback loop this whole year, which is causing rates to rise. And now the feedback loop's going the other way.
All right, we're going to cut to our first commercial break here. I want to make a mention here for the Transcendence Theater. They're doing their Broadway holiday production, December 1st to 3rd and 8 to 10, excuse me. So the December 1st to the 3rd and the 8th to the 10th at the Hannah Center in Sonoma. You got to go to bestnighthever.org. I don't know if you've ever been to any of their performances. I've been to actually, gosh, at least 5 or 6 of them, and they're actually phenomenal. I mean, it's his best as off Broadway as you can get. A lot of these people are, really professionals, and they do a fantastic show. And their Christmas theme is always kind of fun because it's a holiday theme. So check them out at bestnighthever.org. All right, our first trivia question on the Civil War is: hostilities began with an attack on this fort in South Carolina. Which fort are we talking about? Call 888-912-1190. First caller with the correct answer wins that tanning certificate. Don't go away. You're listening to The Best of Investing. We'll be right back. Welcome back to The Best of Investing. I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with my special guest, Dane Moeller of Primary Residential Mortgage. Our first trivia question on the Civil War. Hostilities began with an attack on this fort in South Carolina. Which fort is that?
I kept wanting to say Fort Funston, but that's in San Francisco, so that's not going to work. Fort Sumter or something like Sumter.
Something Sumter. Yeah. It was kind of neat. We actually took a trip to South Carolina last month, and we took a little cruise ship, like a ferry basically, and they pointed it out to us. It was really kind of cool to get a little bit of history there. Pretty fantastic.
Oh, very cool.
So Dave, we're talking about mortgage rates here. Federal movement expectations. What do you think?
So I think they're done raising. I mean, it was 3 or 4 weeks ago. It was a question of one more increase in December. I think that's off the table. I think they're done. People are calling for 1% reduction by end of next year. I think we'll see more like by next summer, a 1% reduction in the Fed. I think we probably see something in, I don't remember the months they have meetings, March, April. We see a quarter come off, and then maybe another quarter, maybe a half from there. So by August, let's say, we can play this back, see if I'm right. I think we'll be a point lower. They're at 5.5 now on their federal funds rate. So we'll call it 4.5 by August.
And what do you think what will that translate to for the average homeowner for mortgage rates?
Well, I mean, that's a 1% reduction in any home equity line interest rate or credit card interest rates or anything else tied directly to prime. For mortgage rates, I think that brings us back into the low sixes, 6.25, 6.5 range, maybe even high fives, come back around. I think there's a good possibility a year from now, we're talking mid to high fives, 30-year fix for your average.
Yeah, it's funny. I think we all just got kind of spoiled because, I remember my first condo that I bought, interest rates were like 13.25% for that. And I got lucky because I got to assume industrial bond financing at 7 7/8. So I was just like licking my chops, but everyone else was at 13%. And then, everything changed and we all got in the 2 and 3% range. And, we've talked about this over the last few weeks that I think one of the reasons that you're not going to see a tremendous drop in home prices is because there are a lot of people out there who did refinance at 2 and 3%. And, wild horses couldn't drag them to sell because they can't replace that. Now once rates start coming way back down, then you get some activity.
Every amount we get closer, that equation starts to change, and some people will say it's worth it, right? Because there's other reasons they want to move. And in California, we have protected property taxes as well, unless you're over 62. So you have that to consider as well in the equation. But as we get closer, some people will start moving, but not everybody. A lot of people are there in their forever house.
And some people, I got to figure, instead of moving, they're just going to try to remodel their houses.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So good old Home Depot is going to be quite busy for a while. And all those contractors.
Every contractor I know is very busy.
Yeah,
And I think it's going
exactly.
to remain that way. I would be very bullish on home construction companies and their stocks
Yeah.
and Home Depot type companies.
I know, it's like I have a very small job at my house, and we had someone do some work for us who was very, very good. And boy, trying to get him to come back is so challenging, And he's a really nice guy, but it's like, oh, could you just stop by for, an hour? kind of tough. Okay. And then, getting on to like the housing market in general, are you in agreement with me that you think we're not going to see any plummeting of rates, or not rates, of house prices?
No, I mean prices are, it's localized. Some places have come down a bit. Some places have stayed rising, but in general, we're seeing prices starting to come up almost everywhere. And I think as rates come down a little bit, like I was saying in January, February, a lot more buyers going to be coming in and not really more inventory, right? So basic supply and demand it has been balanced, right? And
Yeah.
that's why values haven't fallen. There's not many sellers, there's not many buyers. Well, change the
Do you think,
equation, add a lot of buyers, it's going to increase prices.
and then do you think for the future, like what we're looking at now is going to be the new norm? I mean, let's say rates do come down a little bit, probably not going to see those 2 and 3% range rates for a long time.
People forget that in 2013 we had 3% interest rates. So this isn't like the only time it's happened, but that was like high threes. It wasn't low threes and twos. I think that where we went was a once in a lifetime event. But it's not out of the question. We'll see the fours again, maybe the high threes.
Yeah.
That's not
COVID,
crazy. But 2.5.
right?
I mean, we're not getting to 2.5 again.
No,
which we did.
Yeah, and I think COVID was a major part of that. All right, we're going to cut to our next commercial break here. I want to make a mention for iTex. iTex is a barter exchange company, and it's amazing how much they have. It's one of those companies where rather than using cash, you can just trade services, and it's a pretty phenomenal company. Check them out, iTex, ITEX. Learn all about them and how you can do barter. It's all legal and everything. You get 1099, so there's no hidden, like you're trying to say, trying to cheat the tax man. It's all on the up and up. All right, here's our second trivia question regarding the Civil War. Which general captured Atlanta and marched to the sea? If I remember correctly, I think that was supposed to be a Christmas present to Lincoln, if I'm not mistaken. All right, call 888-912-1190. First caller with the correct answer wins that tanning certificate. Again, here's the question. Which general captured Atlanta and marched to the sea? All right, stay with us. You're listening to The Best of Investing. Don't touch that dial. We're going to be right back. Welcome back to The Best of Investing. I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with Dane Moeller of Primary Residential Mortgage. Second trivia question on the Civil War. Which general captured Atlanta and marched to the sea?
I'm no Civil War buff, but I do know that it was Sherman.
Sherman, yes.
Sherman.
William Tecumseh Sherman, I believe his middle name was. Yeah, had named, I guess that's like a Native American name, Tecumseh. In fact, whenever I hear that name Tecumseh, I think about the TV show Cheers, because the Indian in the bar, it was called, his nickname was Tecumseh. So William T. Sherman. Okay, very good. So far, you are 2 for 2. We'll see if you get the next one. Next one's a little bit harder. All right, so Dane, you're quite the expert on residential mortgage. And by the way, I've had some people give you guys high respect and, and high accolades because you guys do a very, very good job.
Thank you.
So now you had a note here, the NAR lawsuit, NAR, National Association of Realtors. What's the lawsuit? What's going on?
So, if you don't know much about it, a group sued 2 very large national brokers and the National Association of Realtors over the arrangement that sellers pay both the seller's agent and buyer's agent. So this lawsuit, the 2 brokerages settled, and NAR went all the way to court, and they lost.
I mean, it's all negotiable, though, isn't it?
Well, so NAR says in order to list a home on the multiple listing service, which is where all the for sale homes are, you have to agree to this shared compensation arrangement. So what the lawsuit said is, yeah, it's negotiable, but in essence, you have an unfair monopoly and unfair business trade over listing homes for sale, and you force sellers to pay for something that they get no benefit of. No, I'm not agreeing with that fact, but that's what they were saying.
Interesting.
And the court found in the favor against NAR. This group turned around and sued almost every big brokerage in the country for the same thing. And the settlement they won is like, I don't know, $500 trillion or some number that doesn't exist, because they want to basically get back the buyer's commission on every deal for the last 10 years or some ridiculous number.
All around the country.
Over the entire country. So it's not a real number, but what may happen is this arrangement, which we all are very used to, familiar with, assume is the way it works, that the buyer doesn't pay for their agent and the seller does. That arrangement may be changing here in the next few years, which could really change the landscape of how people buy homes and how people sell homes.
Okay, so I'm trying to think, if I'm a buyer, if I'm representing a buyer, how do I, without the specific stated arrangement, I mean, what's the future hold? What happens? Their buyers are going to say, I'm not going to represent buyers anymore. I mean, they're going to get paid.
Well, I mean, yeah, you got to get paid as an agent, right? And most buyers, we help buyers. That's what we do as a mortgage company. Most buyers do not have extra money on top of down payment, closing costs, reserves, moving expenses to then turn around and pay a realtor, right? And realtors, they get paid a lot of money per transaction, but they work a lot of hours to get there. And sometimes the deal never closes and they don't make anything. And so if you look at what realtors make per hour on average, it's actually very normal for their profession.
Well, interestingly, so I knew the guy who started the Madison Company way back in the 70s, and very, very intelligent guy. And he was telling me, because we were talking about commissions one time, and he said, Edward, the real estate agent commission is the cheapest commission that someone pays. And we talked about it, and even though it's expensive, the thing is, if you do what they call a FSBO, for sale by owner, if I'm the buyer and I see that it's a FSBO, I'm going to just reduce the price by the commission they would have had to pay anyway. So the seller's not really paying, that much more, if anything, by having the agent. So then what would happen then is, I mean, I could see the arrangement would be, okay, you just pay 6% or 5% to the seller. Agent. And then the seller's basically going to have a buyer's going to come and say, I'm not going to bring you a buyer unless you share that commission with me. Right?
Yeah. I mean, there will be those sort of arrangements. Maybe the seller's agent, maybe there'll only be seller's agents, and they're responsible for representing both sides, and buyers will have to find things online. Right. But then when there's a disagreement, then you don't have, not each party has their own representation. Mortgages might change to allow for financing of the realtor's cost, which may happen, but that increases the overall cost of buying for the buyer, right? But maybe the home prices are lower. To your point, if they're not paying 6%, they're paying 3 or 2.5. Maybe home prices are that much lower. But in my opinion, home prices are going to stay the same, and the sellers are just going to try to pocket the difference. So it's an ongoing thing. It won't be settled anytime soon, but it's going to be very interesting to see how it plays out.
But if the typical commission, let's say the typical commission 6%, 3% for the seller's agent, 3% for the buyer's agent. Theoretically, what's supposed to happen now?
Yeah, I mean, what's supposed to happen is that the seller's not going to be obligated to do this in order to be on the MLS. Right. So then sellers can say, I don't want to pay a buyer's agent anything, or I want to pay them 1%, or I could do these things and still list my home in the same way. But then part of this lawsuit was that they proved that properties where the buyer's agent isn't getting a full commission, those homes are showed less. So buyer's agents are incentivized, right? So that was part of the issue.
Exactly. Yeah.
So
let's cut to a break here, but that was going to be my point, is that, if you're a buyer's agent and you realize you're not going to get paid anything or get paid a really small amount, it's going to be a disincentive for you to show that house.
Yeah, you're not going to do it.
Yeah. All right. I remember one time we were trying to sell a piece of land and we offered 10%. We just said, we're willing to pay way over what everyone's willing to pay because we want to get this thing sold. All right. So we're going to our last trivia question on Civil War. And here's the question. By what term is the period from 1865 to 1877 known? There's a specific term that it's known by in the historical circles. All right. Call 888-912-1190. First caller with correct answer was that tanning certificate. And stay with us. You're listening to The Best of Investing. Don't touch that dial. We're going to be right back. Welcome back to The Best of Investing. One more time. I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with Dane Moeller of Primary Residential Mortgage. Third trivia question. This was a little harder. Talking about the Civil War. By what term is the period from 1865 to 1877 known?
Reconciliation?
Close. Reconstruction era.
Reconstruction.
Yeah.
My AP US history teachers turning over wherever they are. Almost.
Yeah, that one's kind of a hard. That one's kind of a hard one because it's just
Reconstruction. That makes more sense.
Yeah, it's just kind of like what is it known by? I want to make a quick mention here also for the Tahoe Lakeshore Lodge, which is close to Heavenly and Kirkwood ski resorts. And also they have like 200 feet of right on the beach. Beautiful ocean view. I should say ocean because Lake Tahoe is almost like an ocean. It's so big. Beautiful lake view right on Tahoe. Check them out. Tahoe Lakeshore Lodge. All right. So Dane, okay, we already talked about NAR lawsuit. So what exciting changes and opportunities in mortgage products and guidelines? What's going on?
Well, one of the biggest ones, there's a few big ones. One of the biggest ones is that Fannie Mae changed their rules for 2 to 4 unit properties. Previously, minimum down payment was 15 to 25%. So if you're buying a 4 unit property, you needed to have 25% down. Now it's 5% down minimum for 2 to 4 unit properties.
Was it FHA that you could do with like 3% down?
So FHA allows 3.5%, and they still do. But for 3 to 4 units, they have this thing called the self-sufficiency test, which is extremely hard to pass. And so even though they allow that kind of down payment, it actually doesn't work in almost every case. But the conventional Fannie Mae doesn't have that test, and it works, 5% down. So that one's huge. We also just got the new loan limits for next year that just came out. So that's where the line is between jumbo and conforming. For most of the country, it's now going to be $766,550. Here in Marin County and most of the high cost areas, it's now $1,149,825. So 115, big number. I mean, I remember we were at 417 for
I remember 417
years and years and years. 417, 100. And now we're talking about 1.15 million.
Yeah. I mean, everybody was thrown in the same boat, and then they finally decided, California's a little different. The thing is, it's. I mean, that would be great I could see for you guys as in the mortgage business to do the 3% or 5%, excuse me, 5% down. But what does that do for the stability of the housing market from the standpoint that, that's kind of a little bit what happened in the past, where if people don't have enough of a down payment, any alteration in the market could really jeopardize the loan getting paid.
Yeah, I mean, it's always a concern, and down payment means more skin in the game. It doesn't necessarily mean that person's going to keep their job and be able to make their payments, right? You could do 50% down and then have some sort of life event, and your house is going to go into foreclosure, right? Now you're probably going to sell it.
And that's the thing, is just to sell the house.
Yeah, and it'll be a motivated sale. So you're like, I better sell it quick. The Fannie Mae, I'm sure, did a lot of research and ran tests and stuff to see, how dangerous is this on multi-unit. They already allow 3% down on single family. So, letting people do less down on multi-unit, how much is that going to affect it? And specifically in the 3 to 4 unit, you're often not going to have all your tenants leave at once. So you do still have streams of income coming in to help pay the bills. But it's an interesting thing. And I guess we'll see how that affects.
What are the rates for the multi-fit? Because those rates are different than single family, aren't they?
They are. They're not much worse, though. I looked at this just recently. I had that question yesterday. and it was only 0.625 to cost, which means 0.625 is of a point, which translates to about 0.25% in interest rate. So about 0.25% higher, not that much different.
Oh, interesting. Oh, it's not 0.625, it's 0.625 of another number that makes it.
Yeah, so about 0.25% in rate difference.
Okay, yeah, that's not bad at all. Yeah. Interesting. Okay. We have a couple more minutes. Anything you want to give? What is anybody doing ARMs anymore?
So it's interesting. There are ARMs out there. In the past, in high rate time periods, ARMs have been like the answer, right? I mean, anytime rates have gone up, when I bought my house, of course, rates spiked. I got an ARM, right? And then I eventually refinanced to a fixed. In COVID and with rates falling, all the mortgage servicers who make money on mortgages continuing to pay got completely burned by mortgages getting paid off, right? It's called portfolio runoff. So they realized, wait a minute, we don't make very much money if people refi quickly, right? Because we didn't collect very many payments. Well, everyone who takes out an ARM is signaling, I want this loan for as short as possible and I'm going to refi. Exactly. So as a result, this cycle, you can get ARMs, but they come with multiple points up front. So they say, okay, great. You want an ARM? You pay us our profit now. So, you know, it's 2 to 3 points right out the gate.
Wow.
And that makes it really unattractive because you're saying, wait, I'm getting this loan because I plan to refi. I'm not going to recoup these 2 to 3 points even on a 0.5% lower rate.
Might as well go with a fixed loan.
Yeah. So I might as well go with a fixed, save the money, pay a little more per month and come out in the right place. So they're out there, but they're just not the answer they were before because of the pain the servicer suffered, and now they want their cash on the barrel, money up front type thing. And then what's the point?
So Dane, before we cut out for our next commercial break with no trivia question, but our commercial break, how do people get a hold of you if they have questions about mortgages?
Yeah, thanks, Edward. So with Primary Residential Mortgage, phone number here, 415-870-2756, or you can always email me, D as in David, M as in Mary, OLER at PrimeRes, that's PRIMERES as in Sam.com.
That's good. You don't have this long, drawn out type of. It's funny because at Pacific Private Money, I mean, it's not PPM. Yeah, you literally have to go Pacific. Edward at PacificPrivateMoney.com. All right, audience, stay with us.
Another Edward.
Yeah, that's true. All right, audience, stay with us. You're listening to The Best of Investing. Don't touch that dial. We're going to be right back with some closing. Welcome back to The Best of Investing. I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with Dane Moeller. Last time for today. All right. So before we cut out with our thoughts for the day, Dane, you want to ask me a question?
Yeah, so I'm familiar with your funds, and I think it's an awesome opportunity for investors. The interest rates, from what I understand, have been fairly stable through this rising interest rate environment. Now that CDs are 5.5%, almost 6%, are you guys getting pressure to pay more? Are you paying more? How does that work?
Yeah, actually, yes, we are. We do get a lot of questions from people saying, "Hey, your fund's great, but like you just said, CDs are going up. When are you guys going to increase your rates?" We do offer. Our funds do qualify for QBID, which is a potential tax benefit that people get that you don't get with CDs. But that being said, we are getting pressure to raise the rates. So actually, in our Freedom Fund for new investors, we just lowered the threshold of dollar amount from 250 down to 100,000, and wow. It's going to pay 8%. So we raised it from 7% to 8%. In our Southwest Fund, we are paying a flat 8.5%. That might actually increase to 9%, but not yet. We have to kind of gather ourselves, kind of see. We still have to keep the lights on, right? Make a little bit of a profit. But in the origination space in our Freedom Fund, we have been charging borrowers more. And so we should be able to start paying a little bit more on that. That's why we went ahead and increased it, because, it's a supply and demand situation, just like you said. I mean, no matter how conservative our funds are, even if we, let's say, they're just a little bit riskier than the bank. And so you should be paying, 6.5%. Nobody's going to invest with us if we pay 6.5%. So, we got to make it high enough to overcome the fact that they're not FDIC insured, but they are backed by the houses. So you have that side of it, but the other side is too, from the borrower standpoint, they have choices, right? I mean, the first thing someone's going to do, they're not going to come to me, they're going to come to you, Dane, because your rates are a lot better than ours. But it's only if you, for whatever reason, can't fund the loan, be it a little too low a FICO score or timing or whatever, then we can help that person. But right now we are putting loans out at over 10.5% with a couple of points. So it's a hard pill to swallow for those borrowers, but it is temporary. And then they'll go right back and see Dane Moeller to cash them out of our high rates into your lower rates.
That's the hope, and let's hope those rates keep coming down.
Yeah, because I just in general, I think it's good for the economy. Inflation. I just wonder how much political stuff is going to happen to try to alter things.
Every election cycle, people start bringing that up about a year out, year and a half out. And this time's been no exception. Having been through a lot of election cycles, I don't know how much the president or the outgoing party really can control these things, because it is a free market. I mean, it's actively traded every day, but rates do seem to fall in election years. So who knows?
As long as they don't have prices, but if they fixed costs. Right. It's like when if the government comes in and tries to control costs, that's when all what breaks loose, because that's just disaster. Whether they could try to control oil prices or interest rates, you just have to let the free market decide what it needs to do. And Dane Moeller, again, why don't you give out your information if people have questions for your services for getting them good home rates?
Well, thank you, Edward. 415-870-2752. That's my phone number. Or dmoeller, DMOLER, at PrimeRes, PRIMERES, as in Sam.com. I've said that 1,000 times. I normally fumble it.
All right. And we're going to cut out. Here's our thoughts for the day. So what happened to the turkey that got in a fight? He got the stuffing knocked out of him. And the logo of the Royal New Zealand Air Force features the kiwi. And the funny thing about that is that's a flightless bird. So what's it doing on the New Zealand Air Force as its logo? That's a little scary, actually, but that's okay. All right, tune in next week to The Best of Investing. We're going to be giving away more free prizes for answering trivia questions. Thanks for listening. On behalf of our team, I'm Edward Brown, wishing you the best of investing. So long.